Welcome everyone to our very first Zoom community meeting. Thanks for joining us, and thanks Judy for getting us started. It's been a truly extraordinary few months, 3 months. I know it feels like a lifetime ago. In that time, PSJC has completely transformed how we gather, how we learn, how we pray, how we take care of one another, all of the elements of our mission. And it's been truly extraordinary to watch and to be part of. And I want to acknowledge the creativity and the resourcefulness and the incredible dedication of our staff who jumped in and figured this all out and stayed up all night making websites and posting Devar Torahs online and imagining how we can keep this community going and support each other through this time. I've been really very just enormously proud of what we've accomplished through this time, and I hope you are also. I also want to recognize that so many of our members have stepped up to help figure this all out and to invent programming and invent new ways of connecting and being together. The Avodah committee reinventing our services, and Marjorie and Jan and Angela Weisel and Sue Oren and so many others who have hosted and created and moderated events. We've also had many volunteers making phone calls, checking in on each other. There are people in our community, if you can believe it, who actually have no internet access at all, who have no computer or internet access at home. So we've had people making those phone calls and checking in because those people are were really their only contact. And we've been delivering food and getting groceries for people who need it. And figuring out how to sit Shiva over Zoom and so many other things. So I just want to again say how moved and proud I am of this community. The summer is usually a quieter time at PSJC, and the staff has time to decompress and to think and plan for the fall.
You can ask interview with Kate. He'll open it.
If I can ask a couple people to mute if that's all right. So it's usually a quiet time and a busy time, and that's not quite the way it's going to be this year. The entire Jewish professional world has been mobilizing itself over the past month to start thinking about and understanding the very big challenge that we have ahead of us, which is the reinvention of high holidays for this year, for these circumstances that we find ourselves in. And we've been part of those conversations with our colleagues, with rabbis, with educators, with synagogue leaders here in New York, and in some cases across the country. And everyone has been grappling with this issue and planning and sharing ideas and coming together to figure this out. And we too have been having this conversation over the last month or so. And so at this point, we wanted to get the community together and share some of our initial thoughts, a kind of framework or a general approach to the holidays, and to get some broad feedback and sort of crowdsource some ideas about how we're gonna pull this off. I also want to announce that we have formed a COVID advisory group, which is tasked with developing a set of recommendations for how to begin using the building again safely. as you all know from the other areas of your lives, this is not a switch that we are going to throw all at once. This is going to be an ongoing process of phasing in use of the building over time. And for a long time, we don't know exactly how long, but for a significant period of time, we're going to be, even after we start using the building, we're going to be in a hybrid state of some kind in which our programs will continue to be partly online and partly in person. And that's largely because we'll need to reduce the occupancy of our in-person activity significantly, and we'll have to put in place all sorts of other practices and policies and limitations about how we get together in person for a while. So we have an advisory group that is going to help us, who's doing this research, talking to lots of other organizations in the Jewish world and outside the Jewish world to help us figure this all out. The committee is chaired by Ruth Steinberg, who has been, in her professional life, has been advising other organizations about how to do this, large corporations and others. And the committee includes Renanie Levy, who is very tied into many Jewish organizations, also a member of the executive committee, so she's acting as the liaison to the board as well. Susanna Honig, who is in a former life an architect and knows our building very well and also knows all our programs and has coordinated high holiday volunteers for many years. So she's very knowledgeable about all aspects of our programs. Mark Schwartz, who's a physician and an epidemiologist, and Carrie Sadovnik, who has been coordinating the COVID response for Brooklyn College. And Piper is the staff representative to the committee, and the committee will be working very closely with all the other staff as we work through these issues. So it's a great, great committee. I really thank them all for taking on this daunting and important work. They've only been working for a couple of weeks, and they haven't submitted any recommendations to the board yet. But Ruth is here with us tonight, maybe other members of the committee are as well, and she'll be able to answer some questions at the end of the evening as part of the Q&A about how the committee is approaching its work. Piper, if you would put up the program for the evening. Are you able to do that, Piper?
Yep, just a second. I'm working on it.
Well, I can start while she's, well, here we go. Okay. Go back one.
Okay, let me go back.
One
All right.
page if you can.
Yep, here we go. Is this where we want to be?
No, we want to be on the agenda.
That is the agenda. Are you not seeing the agenda?
It's the end of the agenda. Can you do the page before, Piper?
That's what I have on this.
It's showing breakout groups, Piper.
Oh, weird. Okay, it's not what it's showing on my screen. So
That's all right.
I can
just talk
hold
to
on
it.
just a second. Hold on just a second.
Okay.
Just give me a second. I don't know why it's showing breakout groups. Give me just a sec.
Okay, so we're gonna start with the rabbi who's gonna frame the approach for us, and Aileen is gonna talk about thoughts about youth and family programming, and that's gonna be about 20-25 minutes, and then we're gonna go into breakout sessions. Which will give us all a chance to talk through some of these issues a little bit. And we've proposed a few breakout sessions, which we'll talk about in a moment. Then we'll come out of we'll have about 20 minutes to talk together in smaller groups, and then we'll come back and spend about 20 minutes sharing or reporting out from those breakout groups. And then we'll have questions and answers at the end of the evening for about 15 minutes. And the way that's going to work is that over the course of these 90 minutes, if you have questions, anytime questions occur to you, just put them into the chat. And Elizabeth is going to go through the chat and pull all the questions out. And then at the end of the evening, Elizabeth will read aloud some of the questions, and we can try to respond as best we can. That said, the point of this is really to try to have some discussion. So the breakout session and the report out is really the core of what we're doing here. We have these 5 breakout groups.
David, is this showing now?
Yes, but now we're ready to go on to the next slide, which is the breakout. There we go.
That's the important one anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so these are the 5 breakout groups that we suggested, talking about high holiday services, talking about other holiday programming around the high holidays or through the month or through the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which the rabbi will talk about a little bit more. Teen services and programming, family and children, programming for families and children, and then small group programs, which there's been a lot of interest in finding ways to get people together in smaller groups, maybe outside the shul. There have been talks about getting together in the park or organizing so that people can participate in services in small groups in people's homes. There's talks about shofar tours, or how do we make tashlich a bigger deal and have programming in the park before, after. So if that's an opportunity to talk about some of these other ideas to get together in small groups. Now, all of that said, I know that there's a lot of people want to talk about whether we're going to get together and have services in the shul. And the rabbi is going to lay out a framework for our thinking about that. And I want to make sure that in these breakout groups that everyone feels like if that's where the conversation needs to go and that's what people want to talk about, that's what we should talk about. And these breakout group topics are suggestions, but really the point of this is to have discussion. And so please feel free to take the discussion where you need it to go. I think that is. Oh, so as the rabbi and Aileen are talking, or right now, if you can, if you wouldn't mind going in, and we need you to select which breakout group you want to be in. And the way to do that, what we want you to do is change your name as it appears in the list here. So if you go to participants and hover over your name, you'll either see 3 dots or you'll see the word more, and you can click on that and you'll see the option to rename yourself. And when you do that, just put a number 1 through 5 after your name for the breakout group that you want to be a part of. And if you don't care, you can leave it blank and you'll get assigned randomly.
It seems to me that it would make more sense, maybe it's not logistically possible, make more sense to make our choices after we hear the presentations. Then we might have a better sense of where we want to go. You can
certainly do that.
You can change at any point, but right now it's very helpful for everyone to do that now because we have about 70 participants. So it'd be easier for me to pre-assign, and then if you want to change something, I'll go back through right before we go in and make any adjustments.
And David, I'm sorry, you don't want people to just put the number, you want them to put the number and then their name so you can tell who they are, right?
That would be ideal. If you could just add a number before your name, that would be perfect.
Thank you. The reason I'm asking is I'm seeing a lot of participants who just put a number. So if people could go back and change it to be the number and your name, I think that'll be helpful.
I thank you in advance. And if you're on a phone call and you do want to go to a breakout room, please, after I send everyone to the breakout rooms, I'm happy to put you in a room. I'll just talk to you and get you over to that room afterward.
Can I ask one question, general question? I think there ought to be another topic about how to enhance, say, Zoom experience across the board, because it's going to be part of what's going on in a big way. And both yourself, David, and you know, in terms of a better mic or what have you, whatever it is, really has enhanced technical stuff. I think that that ought to be somewhere, whether it's one of these 5, it should be somewhere. Because even the people on TV, I notice that they have to enhance their experience to really improve the experience. And I think it's part of what's going on.
Yeah, so let's feel free to raise that issue in any of these groups, and we'll take good notes and report out. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to the rabbi to frame these issues for us.
Rabbi, can you suggest that people put both first and last names, as there may be duplicates of first?
Okay, so the request was made that if you can change your name first and last name along with the number, because there may be, we have any number of Davids, for example, in our community. So many months ago, when I actually thought that we were going to be, you know, our big challenge was going to be how to do a Passover Seder on Zoom, and we'd sort of be beyond that by now. We kept asking, "Ma nishtana hashana hazot mikol hashanot," right? How is this year different from all other years? And that question has just gotten deeper and deeper and deeper. We know that this Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur will not be business as usual. It will have many components that feel familiar, but it won't be what we are so used to. And I presented this to I talked about this with Avodah and then with the board. It's like PSJC, right? Normally we have buses and sirens that go through here, doors, and I apologize in advance, but I'm sure we'll have a dog. You'll hear him at some point. But I spoke with Avodah and then I spoke with the board and I asked them one question. Knowing that things are likely to be different, what is the most important thing to hold on to for the high holidays? What for you is at the core of your High Holy Day experience? And it's a question I asked them, and it's a question that I want to ask you today. Knowing that this will not be a typical High Holy Day experience, what for you is most critical to maintain as much as possible? What's at the core of your High Holy Day experience? And I want to invite you to use the chat to respond to that. And we'll be able to hold on to this and to think about it as we're framing the High Holiday experience for this year. Among the key points that came up for both Avodah and the board were the words community and comfort. Not meaning a sense of community, and comfort meaning not change for its own sake, but wanting to include familiar touch points, tunes, and things like that. And so my question is, what we've been thinking about for really months now, is how to make sure that we hold on to these and other core ideas, some of which I hope are going to be coming up on this chat. Knowing, as I said, that this year won't be business as usual, knowing that even if the city and state determine that religious services are permitted, there will certainly be restrictions on how densely we can occupy our building. And we know that we won't be able to pack the place to the rafters as we do on Kol Nidre or at Ne'ilah. And we know that unfortunately the loud, enthusiastic pounding and the passionate singing that we love, that we feel so deeply on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, is understood to be particularly risky at this time. And we also know that regardless of government regulations or recommendations, we have many in our community who simply will not feel comfortable nor feel safe attending services in person. So we know that, like the vast majority of liberal synagogues in New York and across the country, we are planning a primarily internet-based service using StreamSpot in the sanctuary onto the Bima for high quality streaming in the sanctuary, and Zoom so that people can actually see one another. I suspect if this is the first year hearing of this, it's a disappointment. I have to admit, no one likes seeing us all together more than I do. I actually have the best seat in the house and spend a lot of my time looking out at all of you. So I do understand the disappointment connected with this, but we know that that whatever happens, at any given time, the vast majority of our community will be experiencing our services via the internet. And so currently we're working under the assumption that Judy and I will be at PSJC physically, and others will lead or participate via Zoom. This may change, but right now this is our current plan. And we'll hire someone to take care of technical details so that we have a professional who can take care of this. We know that's critical. And I know that people are exploring the possibility of limited in-person gatherings over Yamim Noraim. And there are significant concerns with that. If we can do it in a safe and fair and equitable manner, then that may be something that's included in our experience. But again, even if we're able to do that, we're going to optimize our experience for an internet-based High Holy Day service experience, as that really is how the majority of our community at any given time will experience it. That said, I also want to say that services in shul via Zoom are only one piece of the High Holy Days. The services themselves will be very familiar, I hope, not identical, but familiar, and in some cases there will be significant differences. I know you're going to all be very disappointed to learn that we're going to have to shrink the time of the High Holiday services. We can't do our usual 5-hour Rosh Hashanah Zoom marathon because Zoom fatigue has places limits on us that somehow, when you can't wander off into the kiddush room, we have to actually keep you in front of a screen. Currently, we're planning to take advantage of this year to try some things we haven't been able to do thus far because our building doesn't provide us the space. Where our plan is to have a relatively traditional, we know that our community is very broad in its desires around high holidays. So we're planning a relatively traditional, though pared down Psuke de Zimra and Shacharit service, the early morning services that will happen in one Zoom, and a parallel creative Zoom track, perhaps with guided meditation, with poetry, chanting, things along those lines on another track. And then there will be moments when we hope to bring the community together, be it over Torah service or Musaf with Judy, and at other big moments in the service. Though these will be somewhat abbreviated because of this Zoom fatigue. But as I mentioned, the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah and the day of Yom Kippur services cannot be the whole of the Yamim Noraim this year. We really hope to use the month of Elul in a serious way, which is really what the month of Elul has always been about. So we want to use this month leading up to Rosh Hashanah as a time to offer a series of sessions, social opportunities, educational opportunities, shofar opportunities, all kinds of things to help us prepare for the new year and hopefully to connect with each other. Yes, as I saw flip up in my chat, Ellen said, the Mizrahi Jews actually do exactly this. They wake up very, very early in the morning every day of Elul in order to do slichot, to prepare themselves for these days. We're not going to ask you to wake up with the sun, but we are going to have lots of opportunities to connect. And hopefully during those 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we'll have also special kavanot, special activities to really intensify those days. We're hoping for yourself as an individual, but also opportunities to connect with other people, either in person or via Zoom. We're hoping to make sure that you're connected to PSJC versus via packages. I have dreams of honey cake in everybody's home, just like we have in the middle of our Rosh Hashanah services. A booklet to help explain, to give you ideas about how to bring this experience into your home in a deeper way. How to celebrate with the educational, creative opportunities. All those things, that's one thing that we're hoping to bring to everybody. There's an effort to, we want to make an effort to get a machzor in the hands of each household. They're available online, but we actually want everyone to have a hard copy if possible. And information about how we might do that is going to come out very, very soon. We're hoping that there will be small gatherings, either in homes or in parks, for those who want to be together on Rosh Hashanah, celebrating together in some way, perhaps sharing the service, the Zoom service. We know that one of the good things is that tashlich can happen at any time. And so I told David, I expect to spend a week in Prospect Park, meeting various groups of people who are doing tashlich together, finding lots of opportunities for us to come together in smaller groups. We're also talking about the possibility of making the sanctuary, including the bima and the ark, available for a household, like for one household at a time, to have some moments of quiet contemplation during Elul or between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, because we do know that the sanctuary is really a beautiful, beautiful space, and I think it's one of the great secrets of New York, and we'd like to make that available for people. So the high holidays are not going to be about one single or 3 single days this year. We're looking for many, many ways to connect to one another, not only on the days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur themselves, but throughout these days of awe. It's a journey, one that I think will be both familiar and a little bit foreign, but I know that we'll be able to walk through it together. It's appropriate that we're sitting in the midst of the book of Bamidbar, where we as a people took that journey, continued that journey. Lots of beautiful things came, and eventually we did make it to the promised land. So I'm glad that we're walking it together. There's much more to discuss, but for now I want to hand it back to David.
Thanks, Rabbi. There's one point that I just want to amplify a little bit, which is the Rabbi said that as we consider the possibility for in-person activity within the building, everything that we're going to evaluate in terms of its safety and its equity. Everything needs to not only be fair in terms of how we decide who gets to participate in what, but also appear fair and transparent, which is not always an entirely easy thing. But the point that I actually wanted to amplify was the safety point, and the fact that the staff and the rabbi and Judy in particular are our spiritual leaders, but they are also our employees. So we as a community have a special responsibility to our staff as employees, and they have rights as employees. So as we're having this conversation, I just want to put in your mind that whatever we do, it has to be safe and feel safe for the rabbi and the cantor who, if they're there all day and exposed to people cycling in and out, their exposure is much greater than any one of us who might choose to drop in for an hour here or an hour there. So I just want to put that front and center in everyone's mind, and as we continue to discuss these options. So now I think Aileen is going to jump in and talk to us a little bit about her thoughts about family and youth programming.
Hi. Great. Thanks, David. And thank you, Rabbi Carey. And thank you so much to those who have been having this conversation sort of in separate tracks. So as David mentioned at the beginning, a lot of these conversations about the high holidays have been happening not just internally within PSJC, but across the Jewish professional world. And so even while I was still on maternity leave, I was having conversations both with the other educators in Brooklyn and also sort of nationally and even internationally, as we all sort of talked about, like, what does this look like? So I just want to share some of the things that we are considering, none of which is definite yet. I just want to throw out some of these things around what some of the youth and family ideas are, and whether you're in the breakout room with me or not, or you have other ideas, or you want to be a part of the conversation, feel free to reach out. we often say at PSJC that there isn't sort of like the main service and the youth service and the teen service, right? We're all at services together. We're all one community. And yet we all know that there are different rooms and different things are happening. And even more so as we are thinking about being in different sort of online environments. And so one of the things that I want to be thinking about in particular this year are the ways in which the youth and family programming can really bridge gaps across things, that the resources and the programming that's happening for kids and families of all types and all ages are also accessible for the entire community. So some of the things that we're thinking about are, what does a Zoom family service look like? In terms of a taste of traditional melodies, it's always a little shorter than the main service, maybe even a little shorter than the Zoom main service. So what do the actual services look like, both ones that Abe would be doing for the younger ones that are sort of more song-based and very short, as well as what likely would be a combination of Helene and Matt and me in terms of sort of a JC Kulanu style. What do discussions look like? What does family Torah look like? What does interactive, movement-oriented, we experimented with it a little on Shavuot. What does it look like on the high holidays, both either on the days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur or throughout Elul? So those are the things that are sort of specific service oriented. Other things that are potentially in the works are happening in partnership with other synagogues in the community. We're looking at creating an Elul calendar that would have something you can do every day for the month of Elul, thinking about Teshuvah in relationship to social justice and social action as we lead into Rosh Hashanah, and then sort of guiding programs for sort of people of things for children and adults of all ages. Also considering what it means to have something that you can do at home, something like a Haggadah that can happen at your tables, something that brachot and things that the kids are working on that they can sort of share, special foods you can eat, a cooking class that might happen sort of leading up to it, so the kids are sort of getting their hands on. Those are all things that are in the works related to kids and family and youth and family for high holidays. The other things that are particularly important for me to mention today, and you can spread the word to those you might know who are not here, there are a couple of things I would like to see happen that can only happen if we get buy-in over the summer, because they involve working on it over the summer to be ready. So one of the things is the potential of putting together a virtual choir of sorts with kids and or teens, maybe even both, learning a song and then essentially recording that song in a video form that can be shared around the high holidays. And the other thing is a theatrical thing. We'd love to have a group of kids in August who are working on writing their own essentially play around Jonah that can then be filmed, that can then be shared. So those are things that are out there, but those are only things that can happen if we sort of make them happen in August and then have them ready to go so that they can be shared either as part of a service or leading up to it. So that's where we are right now. It's only June 24th. We have a lot of time to get there. And I look forward to sort of seeing where tonight's conversation and conversations over the next couple of weeks go. It's really, really lovely to see everybody.
Great, thank you, Aileen. That's super exciting, especially the choir and theater ideas. So at this point, we're going to break up into sessions, into smaller groups to talk, and we'll have about 20 minutes to do that. We are running a little bit late, of course, but so let's go till 8:05, and then we'll come back and we will make sure that you know in your group who the facilitator is and who's going to take notes and report out when we come back together, because we're going to take about 20 minutes to hear people report. Okay, great. So maybe if you can mute everyone for a moment, that would be great. Okay, so welcome back, everyone. I hope that was productive. One of the things that we discovered in our group is that a conversation on Zoom of 8 or 9 people is so much different than this kind of situation with 75 or 100 people. So it was nice to see people and connect in a more intimate setting. So now I think what we're gonna take some time and just go through and have each group share some of what they discussed in their groups. And as we're doing this, I know there are questions,
It
so
was
please.
successful in a hamster, Brenda.
You're on candid camera, Ben. As we're talking, as people are reporting out, please remember to enter your questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to some of those at the very end. And I don't know if you could. I think you can all see this image that Aileen put together while we were talking. So she crowdsourced the words that were in the chat to come up with this image of what everyone thinks is essential to hold on to about high holidays at PSJC. So thank you, Aileen. And now let's Piper, can you moderate this, or who is our first group? We broke the services group up into several because there were so many people. So Angela, can your group report out?
That group didn't break up. There was no time to get them to different groups.
Oh, okay. So that's all one group. Okay, yeah, Angela, so can you report out?
I think I was the note taker for group one. Is that what you want, David?
Perfect, thank you.
So just quickly, just give me guidance here. Do you want me to say who said what, or just kind of?
Just what we said.
Okay, so, there are people who, find that the moving places like, things like Avinu Malkeinu, they would like to try to capture a facsimile. There was talk about professional technology, which I think Carrie already mentioned that we would need to do. A lot of people felt that Kiddush and the community, and perhaps we could do that in a smaller venue. One thing that we learned from that NYU apparently believes that it should be 60 square feet per person. So that's something that we should kind of consider. A few people mentioned that just having one person singing or two people singing doesn't really cut it. I'm paraphrasing here, that you need at least four. And other people were talking about choirs. I mentioned that Romumu has a choir that's put together in advance of Shabbat, and then it's shown on the screen, and it, again, takes money, it takes technology. One person said that they would like to sing Avinu Malkeinu many times. One nice thing Tori mentioned that we have, and other people agreed, we have an opportunity to be creative and use technology to our advantage and not really try to recreate what we have, but to be much more creative. Slotted short services with maybe 45 minutes to an hour in between. Accepting that we can't replicate what we've done. Okay, so a few people were feeling that they really want the service Aleph through Zion, and they feel that all of the service is important and they don't want it truncated or chopped up, patchwork. A number of people, again, smaller groups in the building. Oh, here's one. We need to have plan A and plan B. And one plan B might be what happens if Zoom dies the day before. A number of people felt the shofar was really important. The talk, the shofar, our key points of liturgy. Less choral teaching. Again, there's the choir. A lot of people talked about the choir. I think, let me just do one more page. Sequential singing. I think, did I miss anything?
Just a couple of things, I think.
Well, Freddie said that she feels strongly that she does not want us in shul because she thinks that might be too dangerous and she would rather be overcautious than reckless. And Jeff recommended putting plexiglass up on the bima in between anybody who might be singing in front of a group.
But yeah, I think that the overall takeaway was really that community is very important, that there are opportunities where whatever the venue to really do things communally, whether it's singing with, finding ways to put more people singing, whether technologically or however we work that we could create pods of people who can celebrate together to create community in those kinds of ways. And that, there are opportunities because of this circumstance to do both the very traditional service for the people who like that, and then also alternatives, whether we space them in between parts or simultaneously, to really allow people to kind of experience a lot of different ways of upholding, of having the high holidays and feeling those. So, and of course the space issue came up quite a bit, but we, I think that ultimately we all did agree with Freddie that safety has to be the first priority.
Can you hear me? This is Jan. Some of us felt, being one of them, that first of all, if things go well, Kanahara, in September, it may be safer, and that some small group experience inside or outside the sanctuary was really important. And not everybody shared that, so I think that would have to be an individual choice, and that some kind of rotation or being outside.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Group number 2, which was about programming outside the actual services. I think that was David's group, maybe?
Right, so Grace is reporting out for us on that.
Hi, everyone. So we talked about what can happen, not just during Elul before, but also during services on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And we assumed mostly or almost totally Zoom types of services, but we were discussing the various types of things that could happen on Zoom. So somebody did mention that maybe we could do meet, groups of people could meet in a park or together, and then we could have maybe you would sign up for a service, 2 or 3 groups of like 6 people or more, and connect via Zoom with their small little groups. Somebody else said we could have a menu for Zoom groups, so you can decide where you want to go. We were talking about various different types of, maybe going back to the history of PSJC, and Jews and civil rights have different groups on that. We were talking about meditation, yoga during the day. Somebody might, or even just a chat group, maybe if you want to get away from a service, or not just get away from the service, but you need to go chat with, you want to go chat with people, because it's all about community. We were talking about membership and sending out a survey. There was a little bit of talk about that, and I know there's going to be maybe 2 surveys. There's going to be one through membership and one through the reopening committee, and to see what people might agree with. Something came up about doing music in different ways. I know there are other ways that you can do, like a chorus of people, whether our choir or we could get them to record different parts of the services. And David was mentioning some way, I can't remember the exact thing he said, but if you do, there's a cappella group or something, and that people could hear it without, other voices being cut off. I've seen it on TV, so I know that it can be done. Somebody said, people did want some personal contact, but of course, again, we're talking about safety. If small groups could get together. Somebody also mentioned that Judy could teach songs to people, that, because people like the musical experiences, so maybe there would be like small groups of people taking, I don't know, a Zoom class on a song. or different songs. Let's see. We talked about pre-recorded choral services, halal, yitzkor, et cetera, and different ideas besides yoga, meditation, and other, breaks during the day where people can go to. And somebody else mentioned that we should definitely have young people like groups, because I think, I don't know who's, it doesn't seem, I mean, from the screen I'm looking at right in front of me, the 25 people I'm looking at are not young. Sorry, but I'm in that group. And we need to have some young people like groups. And am I missing anything?
Can I just summarize it, Grace? Because I think you threw a lot of stuff in there. I think the overarching theme from our group was that we need to have some events that happen in a little that might be around teaching part of the service to people, teaching people how to lead part of the service, if they want to get together in smaller groups, maybe to participate in the bigger service, but also to have lots of options during the day and during the services of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, where people can step out and maybe join a meditation and then go back, or join the, the virtual Kiddush room and come back. But that it's just important to have a lot of different things surrounding what's going on, even during the services. For those who may not have the attention span to spend the entire time in the service, but also those who might want to participate in a shorter service that's available.
And I want to add one more thing. I know I'm just putting a lot out there so people can absorb it and maybe get back to us with feedback on what they thought was good or not good about what we did discuss. So Roberta had mentioned that she loves to listen to the congregant on Yom Kippur talk about experiences in the community, and that maybe small groups of people very small groups of people can get together and discuss their holiday experiences over the years, or their Jewish experiences. And she felt that that might bring, a small group, like 5 or 6 people, could bring people together.
So just the one second of summing up, and so just kind of imagine it as a kind of catalog of events that take place before, during, and even after services and the like, in various ways, or even during the month of Elul, that people can essentially move into or move out of in some way. And that can include, as was mentioned, parallel, anything from parallel services to yoga of the heart at the moment, at the particular moment, and give people a lot of options, so that the issues of the difficulty of concentration and Zoom fatigue can be really handled, as well as outreach to the larger community as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And there will be immediate.
We also discussed the power of that time for membership, and how doing tours of the sanctuary and that kind of thing could be a way to attract new members.
Or just having options that will attract those folks who are only members for the high holidays, or only buy tickets for the high holidays. We have to keep in mind how to keep those folks engaged.
Okay, and can I make a comment? I was not in this group, but one of the highlights of the high holidays is the Dvar Torah of the rabbi. We have an amazing community of so many people. Because the services are going to be much shorter, we may want to consider that people would go in with 5-10 minutes of different subjects that are connected to the holidays, that are directly connected or not directly connected to the holidays, and get the community involved in an intellectual expression, which basically brings the best of us. I mean, if you look around, you see people with so many things to contribute. And this is an opportunity because the services are going to be much shorter. So between things can be when we have people that come in and give a talk of 5 minutes, 10 minutes, think about it.
Great ideas. Thank you.
Yeah,
So
this is Lex. If I could just jump in, I had a thought based on what Avi said, that maybe some of the highlights of the services could be recorded. So, say the rabbi's talk or the members' talk could be recorded. So, if someone misses it at a certain time, they could see it the next day or later.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think that's a brilliant idea, and we've actually made plans to pre-record many of the things that will be happening, so that people who have other obligations can meet those obligations, and also so that in case there are issues with Zoom, we won't have to reschedule Rosh Hashanah.
Okay, great. Let's hear from group number 3, which was ostensibly about teen programming.
Ostensibly, we were really on target, I must say. I thought we had a pretty focused conversation, and I think the consensus was that there's some interest in having some in-person socialization, and that is a very important thing to work toward. And whether it's something tied to social justice now over the summer, leading into the holidays, or a special teen Tashlich service. And that might be something where if we had a coordinator, we could get different teens to sort of have like an arts kind of a program where people could do poetry or music or sing, dance, like whatever they're good at, and express some of their feelings now, whether it's on a specific topic or the holidays. And then there was an interest in having a discussion over the holidays. Again, something that maybe there would be a short reading from the liturgy and a short reading from current events, and a way to tie the holidays into current events and bring the children or the teens in. One thing that was mentioned is that we really should consider dividing the teens into older and younger, so that they can socialize and sort of be like, I guess it was put like, the younger kids are separated, but then they get after post bar mitzvah and they're with kids up to 18. And that was too broad of an age group. So we should try to do something about that. And then there was some interest in sending the kids themselves a survey. If we could do a short survey to see what kinds of things they might be interested in continuing during the year, whether it would be a virtual Shabbat dinner, until we get back in person, or other kinds of activities like that. So I don't know, anybody can chime in if I missed anything, but I think those are my notes.
Great, thank you. Group number 4, families and children.
Sure. So I'll just go over some of the things that we talked about. In general, there was a sort of a willingness to try some things that we haven't done before because of with the opportunities. So for instance, either setting up a kids choir or a kids play, as Aileen sort of previewed in the general discussion, trying to set up potentially maybe setting it up almost like a short mini camp for kids to participate in during August. Another thing that we've never actually done before, but that could potentially think about this year, would be a family program, a family service for Kol Nidre that saw some traction there. Additionally, there were very similar comments with respect to having some sort of in-person small group get-togethers, whether it's a sort of a kids shofar tour or a small gathering, potentially a kids tashlich. We'll take up the entire coastline of the lake in Prospect Park. It'll be just PSJC groups, and potentially doing something with more focused on age cohorts rather than geographic, but potentially doing something to help keeps the sort of kids and youth and family community strong during this time. We also spoke a little bit about timing. There was no great consensus in terms of splitting the youth programming to a completely different time. I think there's even some willingness to have the kids programming at the same time as the adult programming as you know, a free electronic babysitting. So that might be a draw there as well. And we also talked a little bit about the types of resources that families might need, not necessarily just honey cake in a mock store, but also more willing to do, for instance, links and not necessarily hard copies of materials, but just something so that everyone is roughly on the same page. Feel free to jump in if there's any.
Anything else on that before we go on to group 5? Is that Alan?
Okay, I'm actually going to start and then Alan's going to pick up. I suspect everyone in our group found it very gratifying to listen to the summary of the other groups, because so many of you mentioned the importance of small groups, and clearly we were right to have a discussion focused on that. And we started with a couple of premises, one of which is that people are just really looking for human contact in general, and especially around the holidays. And second, that ideally we don't want anyone in our community to be alone on the holidays, whether being alone means being physically alone or not connected with others virtually. And we thought that small group programming in conjunction with the larger Zoom services was really the solution to getting both community and participation. We also recognize that different individuals have different comfort levels with regard to social interactions. So for some people, small groups would mean ideally in-person contact, gathering in people's homes or in a park in groups of 2 or 3 or 5 or 10. And for other people, it might mean small groups over Zoom because they're just not comfortable physically being with other people. But really, we need to create some sort of experience for people to interact in groups beyond everyone together on the services Zoom. And ideally, we want to start working on that now. We want to begin helping people to form groups, helping put cohorts together so that by the time we get to the high holidays, people already are used to the model, are forming connections with each other. This was also, someone pointed out, this is also a real opportunity for us to start help people form cohorts that they wouldn't naturally form. We talked about intergenerational cohorts, connecting people who wouldn't necessarily think to be together, but would love to get to know each other. In terms of the what of small groups, we talked about a range of possible experiences, including a couple of people or a couple of groups of people getting together in someone's home with respect for social distancing guidelines, wearing masks, perhaps, observing appropriate physical distance, and participating in Zoom services together so that you're not singing by yourself, you're singing with a couple of other people. Meals, holiday meals like Shabbat meals were a real touch point for people, and finding ways to make sure that people are not having meals alone, even if that means, a couple of households Zooming together if they're not comfortable being together in person. We also brainstormed about things that we could do outdoors, including picnics in the park, small group picnics in the park. We can't have 100 people at a picnic, but we could have 10. Renting out pocket parks or playgrounds that are available for rent, and putting up balloons and saying, okay, PSJC has this space for this many hours, we can accommodate this many people, come on over. And setting up groups that way, because when we're outside, we do have more flexibility. We really, what we were focused on is that this needs not just to be something that we start on Rosh Hashanah and do for 2 or 3 days, but something that we begin to build, whether people want to form their own cohorts or whether we, kind of do a buddy system or something, and that it continue at various points, not just during services, but during mealtime, during the afternoons, and ideally even continuing after the holidays. Out of this came the idea of perhaps having Oneg Shabbats in the park over the summer in small groups or other activities so that it becomes part of our weekly routine. Alan, did I leave anything out?
I think you covered all the major points, Ellen. We want to thank everybody for their participation and all their ideas. The ideas that we went through actually turned out to not to be specifically on the high holidays. I want to emphasize that. I think that was a nice outcome, that people saw that these things could evolve to then be used during the holiday, but that these things are also important before the holiday. People are feeling it now. We don't need to wait until 2 days before Rosh Hashanah to get people to meet other people, even if it's just by walking down the street and saying hello from a distance. I think that was the most important takeaway. Thank you, Ellen, and the rest of the group.
Thanks, everyone. So many great ideas, and I want to make sure that we don't lose track of them. So I'm going to ask that the people who reported out, even if there were a couple of people who reported from each group, if you could actually type up your notes and send them to me, I would really appreciate it, because I think we want to put them together, organize them, sort them, and prioritize them and figure out what we're really going to focus on. There's obviously a lot there to focus on. There's a lot of great ideas, and if we're going to do even a fraction of what was suggested, we are going to need help from all of you. The staff is just not going to be able to invent and figure out all of this. So if there is an idea here that you're particularly interested in, or you're willing to help plan and organize and host some of these activities, please do get in touch. I think the point person is still the rabbi for services, and educational programming, Aileen for family and teen programming, and please feel free to get in touch with me as well if you want to help and you're not quite sure how. So with that, I think Elizabeth was trying to cull through all the chat. There's so much chat, and Elizabeth was trying to cull through it and see if there are questions in there. I'm not sure if there are or not. Elizabeth, did you find any questions that you can share with the group?
So I hope we are down, preserving the chat, because what it's mostly made up of is ideas and opinions. Which is great, and lots of good thinking, and a lot of it mirrors a lot of the things that we've heard reported out. So that's great. There were a small number of specific questions that I am not sure got covered, so I'm just going to throw them out. This one in particular, will there be something for those without internet access? And a complementary question: can we set up a resource list for folks without internet access? So that was one question. Should I just go through them, or do you want?
No, let's give people a chance to respond. I mean, that's a really tough one, because presumably the people without any access are also the ones who are most vulnerable physically. Rabbi, you have a thought on that?
I just I think if one of the things we're trying to do is figure out whether PSJC can help bring internet access to I don't think there's a large number. I believe it's a smallish number of people in the shul who don't have internet access. So if we can try to help them solve that bigger problem and train them in how to use it, that would help. But we have been able to help a number of people who don't have regular internet access call into a lot of the programs, which is one of the reasons why Zoom is so helpful as opposed to something like just doing StreamSpot. So there are opportunities that way. It's not as good, but it is a way for people to be included via their phones.
Carrie, so it's Kathy. That was my question. But
you weren't alone. There was other people who asked it. So.
But it's a great question. It's a great question.
But the other thing I was thinking about this is, sometimes there are things that we just can't do. But if we know of other places that have, say, I'm thinking something televised, if we can simply tell people, well, we can't do it, but if you turn on this channel on your TV, you'll still get a good high holiday service.
I think that's actually brilliant. We should, I see where my hand keeps going. I'm sorry, my hands keep ending up in the screen. I think it's a great idea. I don't know what all those are, but I'm sure that there are resources out there and we should be putting them out. And we should put it out along with everything else that we provide, is making sure that people have access. And then we need to call them and tell them, because they won't be looking at the internet on a regular basis, right? No. So we need to remember that we have to address not just make the list and put it up as a link like we might do for so many things. We need to remember that the very reason we would be doing it is we have to actually address that in the way we communicate it with other people, with people who need it. It's great. If people have individuals though who might be particularly interested in this, they should let us know so that we can make sure that we reach out to them directly. But I think it's a great idea. And to acknowledge also that we can't do everything is also a very good thing. A little humbling, and
yes, that's a helpful recognition.
But I think too that we might, with our honey cake distribution, distribute a list of resources, just on a piece of paper, even
everybody
that people can get, for whom Zoom might not be the right answer. So,
I have a comment, Charlie. I know my friend says that there are services at the Central Synagogue on cable for Shabbos, and I'm sure they have services also for the High Holy Days. And if people don't have internet, we can, let them know that if they have cable, they can go on like channel 138, I think, for example, and watch the Central Synagogue service.
Hey, Charlie, since the Central Synagogue uses StreamSpot, and we can actually, so we're implementing that, and you can actually, if you have a Roku, we can make a specific channel, and you can actually watch the StreamSpot on your TV. So we're playing around with all sorts of different options, but thank you for bringing that up.
No, thank you, Piper. Yeah. Okay. You're welcome.
Okay, so I just want to make sure, I only have like 4 questions, but I want to make sure we get to all of them. Another one, which I think people have addressed in various ways in terms of thinking about kind of a chavura model or little groups individually meeting. But somebody asked, how do we capture the socialization and chatting part of the service, which for many is a really important part. All the other parts are important, but for some people that connection one-on-one or 1-on-4 is kind of what they yearn for. And kind of, I think some of the chavura ideas and et cetera are great, but I just wanted to make sure that question got addressed.
Yeah, I think that came up in a bunch of groups, and I do love the idea of these breakout rooms and the opportunity to have all of these other things going on during the main service, so that we can have a virtual kiddush room that's explicitly for people to duck out of the service and schmooze during the service. And we can have a couple of those different kinds of spaces going on.
Okay, so actually, this is my question, so I'll be honest. So we've provided an important function, I think, for you know, about 40 people in the community every year by providing our free services, and most of them are not people who are at all regular attenders. How can we reach out to them and make sure there's, you know, maybe this isn't the year that we reach out to the larger community, but it seems to me if we have some way to do that, have we thought about that at all, I guess?
I mean, I think it's easier in some ways to get people on Zoom. And so I think we should think about how we could reach out, at least for some parts. I mean, I think you're right, Elizabeth. That's an important question.
Yeah, we can certainly post our links to everything that we're doing online. Whether we should be doing more than that, or you know, trying other ways to conduct outreach, I'm not sure.
We might want to consider just visual things on the synagogue, like banners and things.
Mm-hmm.
We can, okay.
Elizabeth, I just want to say something, because having ushered downstairs and seen a lot of the people coming in who were community members, not members of PSJC, honestly, I think a lot of them can, I don't want to sound so crude, but I think this is something where we need to take care of ourselves first and foremost. And I think it's a lovely idea to include people outside the community, but I think this is an opportunity to get them join our shul.
I'd like to chime in for a second.
We probably don't want to have a big conversation about this because we're going to run out of time. I'm just raising the questions and putting them out there. And there's really only two more. So let me just say them, and then David, you can moderate this however you want. Someone asks, so what if we're wrong and things are going to be better in 3 months? And we are actually going to be able to come together? Is there any planning around that? And then the final question was, is there any thought about whether we can have a service in Prospect Park with giant, fabulous speakers? Okay, so those are all the questions that I gleaned from. I'm now passing it to you, David, to moderate.
Great, thank you. So the first one of those two is sort of the crux of the matter, and the difficult question that everyone has been dealing with, partly because high holidays planning takes a lot of time, no matter how you do it, and the staff really needs clear direction and focus. You know, everything that we just talked about is a tremendous amount of work. So what we've said so far is in order to try to give people the direction and the focus that they need, focus on making the best online experience that we can create. And we have this other committee that's now looking at what's needed to have safe use of the building itself. And we're going to continue to monitor the situation. And if it seems like everyone feels more comfortable doing that, we will try to add some in-person activity. But it's going to be supplemental to this core online experience that we're doing. You know, mostly because at this point we have to commit to something. And we have to know what we're doing and make it as good as we can make it. And if we can add an in-person thing, either in the shul or in the park or something, we'll do that. But the reality is that as we get closer to the fall, it's going to be more and more difficult to actually pull that trigger and make it happen at the last minute. So that's the strategy. We're not ruling it out, but we're really committing to the online experience and trying to make that as good as we can. And in terms of a big outdoor event, I mean, a lot of people have also raised the question of the yard and whether whether we fully have explored making use of the yard. And I do feel like unfortunately, the yard, I mean, even if we were to get as big a tent as we could in the yard with the kinds of requirements that are in place for singing, you're just not going to get very many people safely in a tent, even in the yard. So then you go to, can we rent out? Can we do something big in Prospect Park? And frankly, we haven't really explored that seriously. And maybe we should. I'm not quite sure what to say about that. It's obviously a big undertaking for an organization like ours that is not not really set up to have enormous events like that, outside our building. It's a very, very challenging suggestion, especially to try to do that over the entirety of the high holidays. What do other people think about that?
David, this is Ruth Steinberg.
Yeah,
so,
thanks, Ruth.
So let me jump in for a quick second because I've been doing an enormous amount of research on this topic, and I'm watching the chat. I tend to agree that the New York City Parks Department would not likely issue us a permit because there are 157,000 schools in New York City, all of whom would want that permit for the park, and there would be no way for them to make a determination. The secondary part of it gets to an issue of whether or not we would have control or lose control of the social distancing in light of singing. And so what we don't want to do is be the shul that, 200 people came down with COVID because we had the best intentions, but we lost control of the crowd. And that would really be detrimental to us. That would be existentially detrimental, as opposed to let's figure out how to make this as comfortable as we possibly can. I made that 157 up. That's a random number. But I think the messages that I'm hearing today, as in terms of reopening, the Reopening Advisory Committee, are really positive around finding ways that we can create that social experience in smaller groups where we can control the physical space and really protect everyone, because it's not like we don't have people in our community who are at risk. And, it's a real challenge because everybody wants to participate. And yet the reality of the situation is there's a not an insignificant portion of our population who would be considered at risk according to the CDC guidelines. And so I think protecting the community is probably our highest priority. And so a large gathering in the park is not likely to be something we can achieve.
Can I say something? I totally support what you said before. And again, I come from the experience of NYU. When I want to come to the office, I have to go to an app, and they ask me questions about fever, about coughing, about everything. You cannot get into a building today without that. This is very risky, and there is a very, very big danger that we're going to have a second wave in September. There are some places also in New York that we see a spike. We need to be extremely, extremely sensitive and extremely, extremely careful. We had discussion, and we have discussion on the highest level about teaching with Zoom or teaching frontally, which is about the same idea, the same issue of personal connection with students, or basically teaching, you know, for my bedroom, which I'm doing right now. Okay, we are going to teach almost 100% remotely in September, whatever happens. And I think we have to be very careful. There are very many elderly, including myself. I'm 74. So although I had the virus and I have antibodies, nobody knows how effective they are. So we have to be extremely careful.
Thank you. And thanks, Ruth. I think that that's a helpful perspective. Okay, we've clearly gone over here, but I think it's been extremely productive and helpful to hear all your voices and your ideas. Please do get in touch if you want to help implement some of these ideas. And with that, I will turn it over to the rabbi to make some closing remarks.
Yeah, I just really wanted to say thank you to this community, because this is we're facing a very big challenge. And I appreciate that people were able to gather today and to imagine it as an opportunity to think creatively, to actively work to create the community that we all know and love, and to help figure out ways to bring everybody together. And it will take the entire community to help that happen. I appreciate the thoughts about connecting with people that we don't always see, and the ideas that have come up here. Some of which I have to say, some of which I have passed through my mind, some of which I never would have imagined, and I love that, and I appreciate that. It's one of the things that we at our best really are. It's not just when we sing, but also when we think and when we trust each other, and when we do exactly what happened today, where we talk honestly, where we listen well. And I know that this is a very stressful time, and I know how I know that sometimes it's a challenge to do that, to really listen well, even if some of the ideas we like and some of them we don't like, and to be able to share our thoughts in productive ways. I really, really appreciate what happened here, and I think that is going to guide us. And I personally was taking copious notes, and will be looking at everything that people have presented. And I know that, and I hope that many of you will join us as we start to put out word about what we might be able to do, what feels realistic for us to really make happen for this community as we create an opportunity around Yamim Noraim, around these days of awe, that will engage us and help us to remember those things that really do hold us together. That Apple word cloud was really beautiful. Aileen, I hope that maybe as we're ending, we can see that once more as we remember that who we are as a community, and we will continue to really hold on to that, and to make sure that those values, those core ideals of who we are, guide us along the way, knowing that and that we'll be willing to take some chances, to try some things we haven't tried, and accept the fact that some of it we'll get right, some of it we might slip, but to allow everybody to have the patience to be together and to remember who we are and who we might be. So I thank you all, and I'm not quite ready to say Shana Tova. It feels a little bit early for that, but I do hope and pray that together we'll end this year on a very strong note, and we'll bring in the next year with all the hope and all the possibility that I walk away from whenever this community comes together in any way. So I think that Judy may have a little something for us. Judy? We're in your hands.
I think she's still here.
Is she still? I don't know.
She was here a minute ago.
She's here. She's pointing up a finger.
Ah, you're muted.
You're still muted, Judy.
Pointing up another finger.
Still, there you are.
We can't hear you, Judy.
You're no longer muted, but we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. A good example of when it's important to have a plan B or C. Thank you for letting me be part of this wonderful conversation and the many, many ideas. Just, you know, also I'm working closely with the rabbi, with David, and also networks of cantors and singing friends and other synagogues. And I'm listening carefully and trying to learn and see what I can bring from the outside also into this conversation so we can have rich and meaningful and freilich and deep Yom Tov services together. So I put the words back in about renewing our days as of old, but you know, every day is a new day. So we take from the past and we go forward, new ahead. And I think this conversation was just a beautiful example of that. So join me once again. I guess you probably should mute, unfortunately, but join me one more time. Yum ba ba bye bye yum bye ay 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 yum ba da 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 la 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 ay la la ay yum ba da 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 yum bye da da ay da 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 la da da oy hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Maybe move your hand something. Yom ba 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 yom ba ay 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 yom ba da 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 yom la 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 ay la la ay yom ba da 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 yom ba da da ay da da yom ba bye bye yom ba da da oy hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Really, best to everyone. David, back in your hands. I think you're on mute now, actually.
Sorry. Thanks, everyone, and thanks especially to the members of the Avodah Committee for all your thoughtful leadership on this. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.